Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Screen Chronicles. I'm Steve, and with me, as always, is Colbstone, House of the Griffin. We're talking House of the Dragon, Season 1. Today, we're going to do, as we normally do, a brief spoiler-free talk. You know, it's going to be so brief, you're going to need to see if you're wearing briefs. And then we're going to go into some spoiler talk about this show specifically, some of the big things we liked, what we didn't like, so that if you haven't seen the show, we're not ruining it for you. And then we're also going to do something kind of unique today. We're going to compare the two shows that came out at the same time, which is Rings of Power from Amazon Prime and then House of Dragon from HBO.
Yeah, because we think like they were coming out at like the exact same time, which was like paradise for people who love that genre, that fantasy genre like us.
Yes, thank you.
And so kind of watching it simultaneously, and since the universes are pretty similar, I think it'd be fun to compare what we liked better from one or from
They're
the
both
other.
prequels to like fantasy shows and genres. I think that'd be good so you can hear our thoughts. So if you want to just listen to that, you can just jump onto the time description, the time stamp in the video or podcast, or if you go to the description below, you can look up that time. But anyway, though, spoiler-free thoughts about Season 1, House of Dragon. What did you think, House of Griffin?
I thought it was really good. I thought it was great, actually, because coming off of a bad taste of Game of Thrones in your mouth from Season 8, I think everyone wants to like Game of Thrones again, and everyone wants more Game of Thrones style, but had that little bit of hurt from the end. This was redeeming for me. It like made me love Game of Thrones again. Acting was phenomenal.
Yes.
Story was really, really good, although I think quite a bit of setup. Casting, by the way, too. Not just acting, but casting. Fantastic job from the casting directors for the most part.
Oh, yeah.
I would say. So I'm very happy with the first season of it overall. I thought it was very quality, too. What about you?
100% agree. I had a terrible taste from Season 8. I love Game of Thrones all the way up until Season 8. I know some people didn't like any of the seasons that came after where the books ended, but I loved the whole show up until it could have been, if they would have ended it right, it might have been able to beat out Last Kingdom for me for favorite show.
It was up there for me.
And
it was up there.
You know, unfortunately, they just did not give a damn with the ending, and they tried to subvert expectations over trying to give a rewarding and meaningful ending to plot lines that they had set up. And
it hasn't aged well, by the way.
No, that's what
I feel like people at the beginning who are defending it are no longer defending it.
I was liking it. I was definitely liking it more when I first saw it versus anytime I'd go back and think about it. I was kind of like, okay, this is the end. And then, eventually I was like, it's terrible. But so you can't talk about House of Dragon without talking Game of Thrones. So I'm sure we're going to do that here. But so spoiler alert if you haven't seen Game of Thrones. But this is still spoiler free for House of Dragon. But anyway, though, House of Dragon is following the Targaryens. If you know Daenerys Targaryen from the Game of Thrones, this is her house before that. And when they had left Valyria, which is where the blondes lived, and they came over to where the brunettes lived, and they set up shop and started running the kingdom at King's Landing.
I think we're like 200 years before
the
events of Game of Thrones.
I saw the books say that the book that this show is based off of was like 300 years before Game of Thrones, but or like a song of ice and fire,
right?
And the book that this was based off of is like a Song of Fire and Blood by George R. Martin. It was said 300 years, but I think the beginning of the show said 200 years. So I don't know, maybe whatever. Nerds, but you can help us explain. And also I'm a nerd too. That wasn't derogatory. It's a long time before. So I felt like they really like that because they're like, we can just get away from that shit we fucked up and we can make people like it. And that's one thing I was like, I feel like they really wanted this because they know they made a ton of money off of Game of Thrones. They already have like all of these giant immaculate sets designed. Like they're itching to get back. Like, we've got to use this giant dragon head and cavern,
make more dragon heads
that we built. like we've spent a lot of money on this for one terrible season. Let's use it again. Come on, let's go.
Yep.
So but anyway, I was very hesitant to even watch the show because like anything that leaves a bad taste in my mouth, I don't want to reward them for that bad behavior. Like Game of Thrones.
But that wasn't the same people though.
But they were someone who was in charge of Game of Thrones is also in charge of this, and they said what you guys are doing is okay. That's what they told David and Dan when they decided to just screw over every single character. They were like, that's okay. And then they're like, okay, let's make House of Dragon now. Let's make more money. So I was really hesitant to do that for them. Same thing with Mass Effect. I loved Mass Effect until the ending was terrible, and I was like, I'm not buying the sequel, and I still haven't, and I never will. Yeah, that's me. That's who I am.
All right, fair enough.
And so I was really hesitant to watch it, and you kept telling me to watch it, and I was only watching Rings of Power at the time, and I was like, I don't want to support this behavior. And you're like, Steve, I'm actually liking this more than Rings of Power right now. And I was like, oh. And we'll get more into that later. But I really liked it. I thought I enjoyed the scheming more in this than I did in like the first season of Game of Thrones. There was also more action in this first season than there was in the first season of Game of Thrones. You know, George R.R. Martin makes no character except for maybe Jon Snow someone that you like all the time. Right. I would say there was probably more people that I liked in this than there was in the first season of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
So I really liked it.
Cool.
The only downside I would say is, you know, sometimes I was just kind of like, can we see another sword fight with a dragon though? Can we see a little bit,
yeah, while you said there was more action, I definitely think it was mostly political, mostly plotting this season, mostly just really good acting, with brief spurts of action, brief spurts of like, and when the action came, it was jaw dropping.
Yes,
for sure. And it was memorable. It was like, holy shit, that's going to just be ingrained into my brain when I just saw. And there were also things that like I had totally forgotten how off-putting Game of Thrones was at times, and like how uncomfortable there was. And even in the first episode, which we'll get to in a second, there was stuff that made you extremely uncomfortable watching.
I'm glad they kept that though.
Yes,
I really am. And I because I know that there was another reason I was hesitant to even watch it is I was like, there's too much social political influence now in the world on things to like actually make this a good show. Like I heard that they had a mandate like you can't show as much like sexual violence. Not that I'm like I want to see sexual violence, because that was always like the moments I would even fast forward through. In like especially on rewatches, I would just fast forward through those scenes like don't need to see that happen. But like at the same time, it's like I don't want someone to limit their creativity because of that. You know what? Instead, that what they did, which made me, you know, not as uncomfortable, but was still uncomfortable, is they had everyone giving birth every goddamn episode. Just every episode started with
just there's one going, that just opened with that.
Every episode.
I know, it seemed like
started with that.
Yeah, there was definitely things that made you uncomfortable, but that's Game of Thrones style, you know. They kept that, and that's all good. Again, I think the strength of this season, not only good writing, which they had really good source material for, they diverted from it a little bit here and there, but the acting was phenomenal. There's a few characters in this that I think like deserve Emmys for their performances. I don't know if I can say the same of anyone. We're going to talk about this later at the end. I don't know if I can say the same of anyone in the Lord of the Rings show that acted as well. I think House of Dragon's strength was its cast and its acting.
But they needed good writing though for it too, in which
they did, and they had good writing.
Yeah, it was good directing.
Yes,
you know,
compelling.
I really like this show. Before we get into spoiler talk here, what would you give the show? What 0 is season 8 Game of Thrones, and 10 is Battle of the Bastards. You know, like what are you giving this?
I would give season 1. I'd give it an 8.5.
I said I'm fine.
Come on. Out of 10?
I'd go a solid 8.
Solid.
Let's end this mummer's farce. Sir Eric, bring me Lord Hightower so I may take the pleasure myself.
Solid 8. Okay.
Yeah. This was something I just wanted to just keep watching every episode. I was like, next
it's
one
the
now,
last one.
please. And I'm like, I've got to go to bed, or I've got to do. Or it ended. I thought it ended, at a really spot that I was like, I'm ready to keep going. So
Yeah. And I don't know how long it's going to be to the next season, but
I think if you were a fan of Game of Thrones before it came bad, and you're like me, the only reason you weren't watching is because you're a good person and you want to hold on to your convictions. It's okay.
because
I'll
that's
tell
what
you-
makes you a good person.
It's okay to do this. I still think I'm a decent person,
I
still.
don't think so, but
So maybe don't. Maybe don't.
I don't know. I'm itching to talk about some deets.
Well, let's
Some
get into some
deets.
deets.
By the way,
Spoiler alert, people.
We should
Spoiler
we
alert.
should just give a shout out to our Last Kingdom listeners, who I know we have a lot of Last Kingdom followers who listen to us. If you haven't seen Game of Thrones, there are 2 familiar faces from the Last Kingdom that have one has a pretty prominent role at the end of the season. Another has kind of a smaller role. She's in it a couple times, but Ewan Mitchell,
That's
this is
it.
going to do wonders for his career. He plays a really important character later on in the season, and then Thea Sabin, she plays his sister.
They both play Targaryens.
They're
in
both
this.
Targaryens, and but Ewan Mitchell's character is very compelling. He even got a post-episode interview, one in the last episode.
Oh, I don't know if I saw that.
So anyway, Last Kingdom fans, you want to see more Last Kingdom, and Outlander fans. There's a couple familiar Outlander faces in this too, including
Absolutely.
Ned Gowan and
Graham
Dougal
McTavish.
Mackenzie.
Yep.
They both have really cool, noble characters in this. They're not in it a ton, but they are in it.
I'm really looking forward to Graham McTavish, what he has going for, because he was kind of just the guy in the background in this, and I was kind of like, you're kind of wasting a tremendous actor right there, just having him stand around. I'm sure in the
Yeah.
future he's gonna do some cool shit.
He had a cool moment at the end where he
turn in his
know,
cloak.
yeah, he took his cloak off when, Viserys had finally died. They were trying to order him to do some things that are not so nice.
And it was after
And he's like, there's no king and I'm the king's guard, so I'm not taking orders from you. Here's my
was
cape.
after-
And that was like,
well, it was after too. Sir Curly Locks killed Bill Patterson, Ned Gowan
Yeah.
from Outlander. What's it? Lord Lyman?
yeah. Kristen Cole killed him.
Yeah.
So Kristen Cole, who had a huge character development. There's a lot to talk about here.
Big switcheroo.
Yeah. And he killed him with a ball on a table, which I was like, how, what? I couldn't believe that killed him. And I don't think he meant to kill him. I think he just meant to like be an enforcer.
But yeah, he's not a good person. I thought he was like
Kristen
here's-
Cole.
Yeah, at first I was like,
Scene.
here's our Jon Snow in this season,
Yeah.
I guess. And I was like,
So-
he's all right,
Yeah.
But then when he killed that guy,
I know. So I
with
mean,
his
it
bare
goes all the way
hands,
back to
I
the
was like-
first episode with him. Like the first of all, the first episode had an awesome jousting sequence, which I was like, cool. Like there's no like real action, like real battles going on this first episode, but at least they're gonna give us a jousting
mhm.
tournament. It looked great. And they had introduced Daemon Targaryen,
Daemon is my favorite, by the
who
way.
was awesome. And at the beginning, I didn't like him though. I was like, oh, he's a trouble. He's kind of a dick. He's ahead of like the town enforcers, and he's just enforcing pretty violently.
I don't know
Um,
why, but I liked him from the beginning. There's times like I don't think I'm supposed to like him.
Well, that's what I was too. Like, I like him on screen, but I don't know if I like him.
But the thing is, like, his core values, like, I'm all about, like, he's like, let's stop crime. I'm like, yeah, but like
Yeah.
maybe you shouldn't like cut off people's arms and
yeah,
dicks,
yeah.
And then he's like, I care about my family, and I'm like, and he'll do
Yeah.
like pretty much anything for them. But I'm
I
like,
love my niece
I won't
in
fuck
a
my
romantic
niece.
way.
So, but and sometimes you're mad at your niece, but like, I'm not gonna choke a bitch, like,
Jesus Christ.
man, I loved him. And
Great actor, Matt Smith.
Matt Smith, who was
he's-
I guess like a
He was in The Crown as Prince Philip,
Doctor Who,
Doctor Who,
and other things that I've heard are good. I haven't seen And
I'm
thought
watching The
he was-
Crown now, and he was great in The Crown.
Yeah.
It's interesting because his character in The Crown is somewhat similar to his character in House of Dragon.
How
At the
so?
end, so once he does marry Rhaenyra, and he's like, remember when he's like trying to go into battle at
Yeah.
the end, and
Mhm.
she came in and was like, "No, I'm actually the boss, and
Mhm.
you're not." So in The Crown, he is Prince Philip, married to the Queen, and she also bosses him around in that a lot. Like he wants to do one thing, and she's like, but yeah, I'm the queen though, and no, you can't do that." And I was just like, oh, so he's pretty good at playing this like husband who you kind of in The Crown too. There's times I'm like, just let Philip make decisions. And same in like show solved if they let Daemon just take the dragons and just go ham. You know what I mean? Like
really?
it's over. But anyway, Matt Smith, fantastic. And he's one of the ones who does not get recast, which is great because one of the things about this show in season 1, there were a bunch. Almost every episode was like a big time jump, it seemed.
Yeah. This also reminded me a lot of Last Kingdom in the sense that every episode was so jam-packed with story and stuff. I felt like I had seen a few episodes. I'd go back and be like, oh man, I've got to be like halfway through the season, and I've watched like 2. I'm like,
yeah,
what?
A lot of stuff happening because of its time jumps and
and just the amount of story they put into each one. So I felt like Last Kingdom really helped prepare me because remember the time jumps in season 1 of Last Kingdom, there was a few times like, whoa, she's pregnant now.
right.
So like I felt like I was ready for this. Thank you, Last Kingdom.
Thank you, Last Kingdom. I mean, it even goes back all the way back to the former king, when the king had to choose between Viserys and Rhaenys Targaryen. And because everyone, I guess, thought Rhaenys would be a better leader, like actually, but because of nobody thought a woman should be on the throne, they ended up picking Viserys.
King Viserys, Targaryen I got some real Alfred vibes from this guy.
Totally.
Going on into the season, and I know that George R. Martin, author of the books that this is based off, is also a fan of Bernard Cornwell. Bernard Cornwell, if you listen to our chat with him, the author of the Last Kingdom series that the show is based off of, George R. Martin has serpent breath. Bernard Cornwell was telling us that he has serpent breath, Uhtred's sword.
Yeah.
There's also like a preface or like a promotional quote from George R. Martin on some of the books saying like Bernard Cornwell is the best battle scenes written ever.
Yes.
So I know he's a fan, and I wonder if the series was based off of Alfred some, even though Alfred
could see it
was a historical character. It's not like Bernard Cornwell made him up, but
there's very little written about his personality.
Yeah, and
that was probably embellished by Bernard Cornwell.
Yes, and one of the things I really loved about the series was, in the beginning, I told you after the first episode, you're like, what do you think of the king? And I was like he just doesn't even look like a Targaryen. He looks like if like I showed up with a long blonde wig one day, I was like, that's what he feels like to me. But like as the show went on, like his character was so cool. I mean, every character in this was so well
but
written.
he stood out.
And yeah,
he stood out.
Especially, it turns out that he has leprosy. At first, I was like, "What's he got going on?" He's got this.
I thought it was like some sort of tetanus from the throne. I thought he
would have been cool, which would have been really cool. When I looked it up, though, it was leprosy. And if I'm incorrect, fans, comment below and let me know.
By the way, I think the Iron Throne from Game of Thrones looks so stupid now compared to what it is.
Right?
Because apparently in the books, George R. R. Martin wanted this throne like that you had to climb up to, and swords, enormous. Way more swords. And I think the Iron Throne in Game of Thrones looked kind of smooth, like comfortable to sit in. Where this one, it's supposed to have jagged edges that are like supposed to like stab whoever sits in it to remind them that being king is a burden, that it's not easy. But it was cool how they did it. I don't know if it's exactly how he described in the books, but at least on the stairs leading up, they had like melted swords and bent swords and stuff. It was cool.
I think the illustrations I've seen when they've tried to be like, this is how it is in the book versus how it is in the show, the illustrations are Like the throne is enormous of sorts. Like
Yeah.
the throne, it's the thing you sit on is like enormous, you know. And when Game of Thrones first came out, I mean, they only had enough money for, you know, so much of the show. Like,
And it looks super cool.
they didn't have it still looked cool, but it doesn't look as epic as like the drawing. So I think in this they were like, well, we can't make the throne giant, you know, without being like, well, why does it look so different in the
Right.
Game of Thrones end? But they're like, what we can is add just a bunch of fucking swords around it, you know, which I thought was really cool because
I
like,
want to know who was the king that just like got the brooms out and started to sweep those off the steps.
well,
It's
you
like,
know,
no, what is this? Like,
right? Like, who did why? He's like, I kind of like, I want to walk from it from like the back someday and not have to worry about like falling and dying on something.
yeah.
It
was actually like an OSHA representative that came in. First of all, there's no ramp leading up to the throne.
This will not do.
Yeah.
You have a disabled king, and
Yeah, we need to make a
there's no
ramp here, so we're gonna have to take these swords out. It was cool. It was a cool addition. I like it, you know, that they did that.
You know, his wife's getting really religious, and I bet you it's her and like they're gonna use like her and her religion with the seven kind of thing.
Yeah, it could be
to get rid of that. I bet you is what they're gonna do.
Yeah, maybe. But Paddy Constantine, who plays Viserys, I just like to highlight him for a second because, like you said at the beginning, I was also very skeptical of him, as I think you were supposed to be in the show, because he was not the best choice for king at the time. But because there was no obvious male heirs for the previous king, and they didn't want a woman to be on the throne, they picked him. And I think he, over time, turned into a good leader because he ruled during times of peace.
Yeah.
Too. And he maintained the peace for most of the time he was king. And by the end of it, I thought, he's a pretty good king. Like, he did stick to his guns. Not only was he a good king, he was a progressive king because, you know, in the first episode, he's trying really hard to have a male heir, to the point that he even elects to like sacrifice his wife.
Damn, that was
to try to save the baby.
Brutal scene.
And that was brutal.
I muted it then. Just like I was
yeah,
like,
that was one of the more uncomfortable scenes where they show like her trying to have birth, and they do like an open birth, and sadly neither survive. But
it was also just the fact that like they like how they just like manhandled her. They just like pulled her down and they held her legs down.
Yeah,
it was just like, oh my god.
Yeah, she's in Sherlock, by the way. Did you recognize her?
Oh,
she plays Sherlock's sister in the last season.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so she dies, and that weighs on him because he was basically told before that, though, that like either way she's probably going to die. And he's like, so we can either do this and try to save the baby, or like most certainly she and the baby are going to die. So it's not like he was like just like, yeah, kill my wife to do it.
Yeah.
He was kind of presented with like, she's probably going to die either way, so let's just try to save the baby, even though it was a more violent way for her to die.
Yeah, I don't know if there was if there could have been an option like, let's save your wife but kill the kid thing. I don't know if that was. I don't think there is an option.
They didn't give him that option, but later on they gave Daemon that option, and he elected to save his wife.
I know,
which was, you would have thought the opposite would have happened with him,
right?
You know?
And that was another thing, another scene why I love Daemon. But again, I don't think his wife in that moment knew what was going on. That he had like chosen to save her, and she went out to go kill herself. And I was like, oh, if you would have just stayed there, you know.
I know that was painful too. And like Daemon was just looking at her when, you know, she got fried, and was like, well, I guess I can marry Rhaenyra now.
But I think he
no, I'm kidding. I think he did have feelings for her. I
think he just doesn't like to show feelings, or
he doesn't like to show feelings. Yeah. And
like,
he had 2 kids with her.
Yeah. I love Daemon.
Yeah, Daemon's cool. And you know, that was Baela too, I think was her name, that she killed. And she wanted a warrior's death, so she went to Vhagar, her dragon, which is like the oldest, most ferocious dragon.
And the biggest.
Let's talk more about that later, but I don't want to get too far off of the king.
Yeah, back to the king.
The king, you know, every time jump, he gets a little weaker from his illness. He's loses an arm, some limbs. And in the final episode, like, we don't even see him. So basically he's bedridden, and Rhaenyra comes to King's Landing, and Alicent Hightower she's basically running the ship now. She's like
Mm,
drugging him really with like whatever
over the
medicine,
poppy.
just subduing him and then making decisions. And basically, she comes and sees what's going on with her dad, and he's like lost half his face. He wears like a mask, and he ends up coming out, making it
That's
one of the best scenes in the whole season.
mhm.
Him struggling his way up to the throne, very emotional moment with Daemon and him as he helps him to the throne, because there were times when you thought Daemon like might usurp him
Mhm.
earlier on. Like you thought, oh, maybe Daemon wants to be on the throne, but I don't think it was actually ever the case. I think they just made you think that he was going to do that.
I think he wanted to be on the throne after his brother, though. I don't think he wanted to be there instead of his brother. I don't think he wanted ever. He
No.
never. He values his family. He definitely does, and
I don't think he ever would have
that's what
raised
makes
a
him
hand
so
against his brother.
Exactly. Like he'll shit talk his brother, but it was like when the Valerian, the father of their house, when he was over, and he was like, I can speak ill of my brother, but you won't say those things.
Exactly.
And then like when after he won the battle against Mr. Krabs, he brought in his he walked in
With a
also
crown.
a great fucking scene when he walks. He just
And a
walks
haircut.
in, fresh cut, a crown, walking in with his sword. You know, he's just that BDE just stanking up the place.
Yeah.
You know what it Colby. You have that, and
No.
and then he's just walking up to the throne, and then he does like, I'm like, oh, is he gonna challenge? He's like, no, here you go, here's the crown. Like I don't want it. Like I want to just be your brother and ally, and like I just want to also be acknowledged for being a badass warrior,
Yeah.
and I want to have cool stuff.
Right.
That's what, man, I fucking love him.
Yeah. And
And
part of like
so the moment with the king when the king's going up and he drops the crown, and Daemon, he
Yes.
could have made that scene about him. He's like, the king is ill disposed. I'm his brother. I could take over, but instead he gives him the crown, helps him up, and he gives him like a cool little, just like motivational thing. Like, come on, like let's do this kind of thing, And
I
was
know.
like, I fucking love you, man.
And in Game of Thrones, because the Targaryen name, the Targaryens are out of power. All we really knew was the Mad King and Daenerys, and Daenerys ends up going insane. That like you thought, oh, the Targaryens are these crazy people. No, goddamn, the Targaryens are like family at heart. Like all the trouble that Viserys and Daemon had all series, it never came between their brotherly love for each other,
Mm-hmm.
like ever. You thought it would at some point. And I think the King's Hand early on, Otto Hightower, he like told a story of Daemon giving a speech about the air for a day speech in a bar that we never really saw, so we don't even know if did he do it, how did he do it, was it mocking or was it actually reverence? We don't know. But obviously Otto Hightower is like the little finger of the show and the schemer, and he's going to plant seeds of doubt because he thinks Daemon is going to want the throne, and Otto Hightower doesn't like Daemon. So Viserys and Paddy Considine, I think out of anybody in the show who would deserve an Emmy, it would be him.
Oh yeah.
That scene when he goes up to the throne and he takes just every last bit of strength to do it, and then to have dinner with the two sides of the family that hate each other.
Oh, that speech before that was so good.
Yeah.
Like if not for the crown, then for an old man who loves you all so much, that all that stuff was so good. And the writing too, the writing for the show was so good. And but that scene, how it's delivered, and everyone there was so good. And it kind of resolved some things. It kind of did, but then it also kind of, people then started to try and take it and use like pretend speeches to sort of jab at each other. And I'm like, okay, so they're not going to just start loving each other here, I guess.
Right.
But it was a great scene with him.
I agree. Killing it. And then he dies later in that episode. And that's a huge part of the ending plot of the season, is that he's delirious. We've even seen him in the previous episode like call Allison Emma, his former wife's name. So he's definitely losing it mentally. He's drugged all the time with like the pain relief. Rhaenyra had gone to him earlier in that later episode, his last episode, and started referencing the legend that he had told her way back in episode 1 about the Song of Ice and Fire, and about how a great wind is going to come from the north, and whatever's in that is going to destroy men, or the world of men, which I can confirm does happen, by the way.
Absolutely.
He has like come to the conclusion by the end of his life that he says Aegon the Conqueror is their ancestor.
Mm-hmm. Well, he said Aegon was right.
Aegon was right, yeah.
And then he said something about he is the prince who's promised.
Yeah.
It's like, is he talking about Rhaenyra, his daughter there? Is he talking about one of her offspring?
Yeah. But either way,
it's
he
all
thought he
together.
was talking to Rhaenyra.
Yeah.
And it was Alicent, who, because they can't be creative with names, also has a son named Aegon, who is their firstborn son.
All right.
And
confusing.
And of course, she's going to take it as, oh, so like the king all this time has maintained that Rhaenyra should be the heir until now on his deathbed. She's telling me very clearly, by the way, that Aegon should be the king. And I'm like, God damn, that's like so unfortunate because obviously from her point of view, that's what she thinks. That's what she's like, oh. And it makes me wonder if he hadn't done that, what she would have done. Would she have just allowed Rhaenyra to come in and take over? I can't see that happening.
I don't think so.
But I think that gave her just like the excuse she needed to just fully commit to claiming the throne for her son.
Mm-hmm.
And then Alicent finds out after that Otto and the other guys were already plotting this, and that's what we already talked about when.
Yeah, when she goes there, they already thought this up. They're like,
they
oh yeah, we were
didn't
already
tell her.
Yeah.
They didn't tell her. That was interesting.
Like, oh, I'm glad you're on board, but we were going to do that anyway.
Yeah.
So I really, at first, Otto kind of seemed like maybe a noble guy with good intentions, but I remember when he was first like telling his daughter, he's like, after the king's wife died, he's like, you should go hang out with the king, wear a nice dress. I was kind of like, you sneaky little POS, you asshole, you.
I thought that relationship developed kind of naturally too.
It was naturally, but it kept getting encouraged by her father.
Yes.
It's clearly what he wanted.
Well, no, he put her in that position, but once they did start talking,
mm-hmm.
I thought, oh, okay, like he actually enjoys telling her the stories of old Valyria, and a chance for him to like get away from thinking of his dead wife and how he doesn't have a male heir.
Yeah, everyone else's pressure on him.
Yeah, but good on him though to like stick with Rhaenyra. Like he even one episode tells Rhaenyra, like, "Yo, I am not going to change my mind about you being on the throne.
Yeah, I'm not gonna place you."
I'm
He's like, I did think about it once, but I'm not going to. And which I loved him for that honesty. Like he always had that honesty.
He was a really good guy.
Mm-hmm.
And
again with the parallel we were talking about with Alfred is just the throne scene, just the fact that he was so sick and ill and still like, the symbolism of heavy is the head that wears the crown, how it's wearing him down. Same thing with Alfred from Last Kingdom.
Totally.
Season 3, when they're putting on his crown, he's getting up on his horse, going out to lead his men. That scene to me, I was like, this is so, season 3 Alfred, just that scene. So if you're someone who hasn't watched Last Kingdom and you enjoyed that scene, you will be just in love with The Last Kingdom then.
Yeah, totally. And I know we started talking about Sir Criston Cole, and I did want to touch on his storyline because I think it's super interesting. Now, at the beginning, when he presents the flowers or something to Rhaenyra, the young version of Rhaenyra at the beginning, who I thought she did a phenomenal job. And if there was any person in this world that looked more like a Targaryen, I think you'd be hard pressed to find someone else that looks more like a Targaryen than her somehow.
I think
like she had the look with the blonde hair.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm thinking at the beginning, oh, Criston Cole, okay, this guy is noble. He's going to be this, I don't know if he's going to be the Jon Snow sort of guy.
I thought for sure he was going to be Jon Snow.
He seems
a noble guy around all these ethically, you know, gray people. He's going to
Yeah.
be the one who's always the clear, conscious, stick
And
to the good, right stuff kind of guy.
And I think he was so noble to a fault, which is why he became a bad character at the end, like an evil character sort of at the end, because he was so noble that when he ended up having an affair with Rhaenyra,
he thought he
he
had like
felt
no
so
nobility.
guilty. Yeah, he's like, oh, like I've gone against all my vows, and because I truly believe in these vows, I'm not a hypocrite. Like I either have to give them up and marry her, or I need to
kill myself.
Yeah, kill myself, basically. Or like, I'm not gonna be able to live with myself for breaking my vows and continuing to live by these vows. And by the time he comes to this conclusion and he approaches Rhaenyra about it, she had already kind of been set to marry Laenor. Now, they were set to be married as an alliance. And this was kind of worked out nice because we found out Laenor was gay. And Rhaenyra didn't really love him. So, like, they kind of got together, and I thought this was cool. They were like, look, let's just do it to make them happy. But, like, let's just live our separate lives and do things what we want to do.
Yeah, we can still make sex.
You know, we'll be happy. And she presents that idea to Criston Cole. And because he's so noble, that's like, I can't do this.
They want me to be your whore.
And then when Alicent goes to ask about, because she heard a rumor that Daemon and Rhaenyra went to a brothel together, which was a crazy scene, and was like, oh shit, they are romantically like, I didn't know at that point if Rhaenyra and Daemon were just like very fond of each other as family, and like, oh, you're my favorite uncle.
Friends. I remember when he put the necklace on her the first time, I was like, that kind of gives me sexual vibes.
Right.
and then I was like, you always hear about Targaryens.
Wasn't to the brothel scene when they start like making out and that I started to think maybe this is more than just
I got a little suspicious.
I got a hunch.
I think he's into her sexually.
Right. But then when he pulls out, because apparently there's rumors that he can't get it up or something, or he can't.
I don't think it's that. I think,
well, there's speculation about it.
I think he decides not to because he doesn't want to use her or something. I think it was a noble reason.
I think so. But then maybe because she's like a child still. She looked like a child.
He has a bunch of kids later, you know, like
right. That's the thing though, is he does.
I don't think it's a no. So like when he gets ED when he's having sex at the beginning, I don't think it's because he has a problem with his penis. I think it was just his in the moment he was like, I'm only having sex to like feel more manly right now. But
right.
And eventually, like what was going on in his head was like, I don't feel really manly because my brother's taken away like my privileges and
right.
I'm not getting acknowledged as heir. And then I think in that moment with her, I think it was the same thing. I think he was like, I don't want to like use my niece. I don't want to hurt my brother.
Right.
I don't want to do anything like that would jeopardize like like his kingdom and our family's, you know, power. Because then, you know, he goes on, he gets himself a wife and he has a few kids there. And then he gets some kids with Rhaenyra later. Like, I don't think the guy's got an erection problem. I think he just, it's right. About what's going on in his head in the moment.
But yeah, either way, that night at the brothel, you know, she had all this, she got gotten all worked up.
Oh, she was.
And she was ready. And so that's when the thing started with Sir Criston Cole. But anyway, Alicent approaches Sir Criston Cole later on. She's asking sort of vaguely about Rhaenyra and some sexual exploit. And he immediately thinks, oh, she knows about me. And he just admits it. And he just blurts it out. Which sort of makes him tied to Alicent now.
Mm-hmm.
And then later at that party, it's Laenor's lover who Laenor tells, look, we got this deal. It's great. And that guy over there, that's her. Your version.
that's
her.
You know how you are to me. That's me.
That's
her,
how
you.
he is to her. So you guys, you know, and so he goes over. Right yeah. There. So he actually ends up going over to, and his name's Joffrey, I think, by the way. His name's
Yeah,
Joffrey.
there was a few like Joffreys in this. Like, ugh,
Oh, I know. It's like I don't like that name anymore. And he goes over to Sir Kristen Cole and like is like, "Yo, like we should be friends. Like we should look out for each other because we're kind of doing the same thing." And he doesn't know Sir Kristen Cole by this point is so guilt sick from what he's done, that everyone knows about it now, it seems, and like he snaps. And I did not expect this.
No.
He goes ham.
Yeah,
But that's what I mean. He's
this
like
guy is
so he
not
takes his
Jon Snow.
nobility so seriously that it drives him to do like not noble. So it's kind of a paradox to me.
I think he worries more about people thinking about him being noble than he cares about being noble. Does that make
It
sense?
seems that way. It seems
Because
that
like
way.
he was like, oh no, other people are gonna like think that I'm not deserving of my title and stuff because I had sex one time.
Yeah.
You know.
Anyway, he like murders this guy with his bare hands.
Beats him to death. And then later he just becomes Alice Hightower's basically
Hightower's guy.
Basically like her lackey specifically.
Yeah.
And
well, because he went to go kill himself right after that. He was like, "This is it. Like, I'm gonna beat this
Yeah.
guy to death. I'm gonna go end my life because this is the most dishonor."
Yeah.
And she stops him, and yeah, he basically becomes her puppet. And
he's just very resentful towards Rhaenyra, and like always like picking on her bastard children. And
now I just look at him so differently than I did in the first couple episodes.
I know
it's so weird.
He's a real piece of shit now.
Yeah, because he has the noble look about him. Like he has like.
He looks like he could be like Kit Harington's cousin, you know?
Yeah. And he's like really mean to, like you said, like to Rhaenyra's kids.
Which was also kind of funny is that like, she's like, all right, this bodyguard won't keep having sex with me. I'll just get another one. And all right, next one.
Well, yeah, the guy who ends up doing it is the son of the new Hand of the King once Otto Hightower's out.
Who's also a great guy.
Just a good guy.
King, solid guy.
Yeah.
He's always given just good advice, and like there's a few times he's like, oh, let me guess, you want me to have her marry your son, which if you think about it really would have worked out really well because that's who she ended up fucking anyway. And he's like, nope, I think the smart move is for her to marry one of the Valyrian's kids. And he's like, oh, okay.
He even tries to quit at one point.
He tries to resign
and
because
like
he knows
Viserys is just like, no, you're a good guy, like stop. I'm not gonna let you quit. No.
He knows he has the conflict of interest, knowing that his son is the father of these illegitimate, out of wedlock children.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like I can't keep knowing this and like still serve him. And which is like, it just shows you like how much of a better person he is than Hightower, who comes back as Hand of the King, because that's all he's trying to do is just worm his way in however he needs to get his goals served. It really just shows you the two different Hands of the King, and he dies. All the noble people in this die. And that's why I had a really hard time getting into Game of Thrones. I was like, all the good people I like are getting killed. I'm like, who am I rooting for right now? The Joffrey? Like,
well, you can root for his other son, Larys, who has the foot fetish.
Oh, I hate that guy.
He has his brother killed.
And his dad. That's his dad and his brother killed through the smoke.
Just for live foot.
Gotta get those
action.
Look at those feet.
Look at those feet.
There's a comparison video on YouTube of like the amount of like sex scenes shown in season 1 of Game of Thrones, the amount of like deaths in action in the first season of Game of Thrones. And it was one of the like the breakdowns they had in like the sexual scenes was like there was 2 minutes of on screen of what's his name staring at feet on screen or something like that.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. And then a solid few seconds of a guy masturbating out the window.
That was amazing. That was amazing.
Aegon.
Just
that was hilarious.
I've peed off of the top of mountains, but I've never gone that far. But it's kind of like, wow, like, can you imagine just being like that rich and powerful that you can just do that in the morning?
That was funny. Yeah, let's talk quick too about, because there's so many time jumps, there were times that the characters had to get new actors.
Yeah.
And that's where I give so much props to the casting department. I thought Rhaenyra was perfect. Like I could totally see her being a grown-up version, I thought.
I liked
know
her,
who was-
but she did look a little different to me.
You thought a little bit. Well, I don't know. I like
Like the nose was pretty.
I guess the
noticeable for me.
nose. But you know who like almost just looked like they aged her
Oh
was
yeah,
Allison.
she was.
Did they
perfect,
just
yeah.
get her little sister?
That's what
That
I was like.
unbelievable.
I thought at first I was like, all right, that looks like the same person to me, but they look a little different. Is that supposed to be the same character? That's because that's how similar they look. And then but that helped me then figure out like, oh, that is the same character. She's got the same like dress from Shrek on. And then
have you seen the comparisons of Shrek to House of Dragons?
Yeah, I have seen it.
It's unbelievable like how they both have a dragon burst in. They both have her in the green dress. It's insane.
I doubt it was like a conscious thing.
They both have them like
But
walking under the king walking under like the swords.
It might have been unconscious though. Shrek might have influenced whoever ended up writing the show. They might have seen Shrek when they were
uncanny.
younger.
It's uncanny.
I wouldn't be surprised. Or
It's
maybe
uncanny.
they did. They were just like, let's like give little nods to Shrek in this and see if anyone notices. Again, when we start off that one episode when Rhaenyra is now older, it's just and and I was like, wait a minute, who is this woman? I was like, is this a flashback of the king's wife giving birth? And then they were talking, she's like, the queen orders you, and I was like who's the what?
It was also a super uncomfortable scene when she like immediately after giving birth walks up with her baby up the stairs,
right?
and I'm just like,
and again, that's another moment where I hate the queen. I hate her so much. I don't like you might be like, well, I understand her point of view because of this. And there's moments where like, okay, she is good in that moment. She has some compassion for something, but generally she's a bitch. I mean, like,
I don't like Allison.
She was like, the only reason she ordered that kid to be brought to her right away was because she wanted to see, like, does it look like a Valyrian or does it look like the other bastard children?
And she even says to him, Laenor, oh, keep trying. Maybe one of these will look like you. Just everyone knows.
What a bitch. But like, that's the only reason she did that. I thought she did a good job though. But I thought she was a little different. And honestly, Viserys's kids, Aegon and they should have been switched.
They should have been switched. I thought the one who played Aegon looked more like Ewan Mitchell, like because he was tall and skinny, and that was Ewan Mitchell. It almost looks like Aegon got shorter when he was older.
Yeah,
he, I guess he just didn't grow. I would have to see now. I'd have to go back and look at compared to his mom. Where's his height? Because he totally looked shorter and when he was older.
I know. I almost wonder if they were cast the other way and they just thought like, hey, this kid is better with these kind of scenes than the other one, or like we can't have this one jacking off out the window or something. I don't know.
I know, but it's not that I can't believe that the young kid, the shorter one, couldn't turn into Ewan Mitchell because he could have a huge growth spurt, and I can believe that.
Oh yeah,
but he did look a little bit more like the older version of the other one.
It's that the younger one looked pretty similar to the older one. And the one that was tall, like you said, like, why did he like get shorter? Or like he was already so like, looks like his body had matured enough that it's like he wouldn't look that much different. Like,
no, but I guess you get into a problem because like you couldn't have the actors switched at the younger age because one's clearly older than the other. And you couldn't have Ewan Mitchell play, I don't think. I think Ewan Mitchell's perfect for the role he's in. And the kid who played the king, Aegon, was great as well. And he like didn't want it. He just wanted to go out and party and just live a life without responsibility. And in his coronation scene was amazing. The way he like realizes, oh shit, I'm the boss now. And like you see it in his eyes. You see him realize that and just own it. And then the dragon obviously humbles him a little bit.
It was a scene I thought this season was like, so why I did like it, I was like, is we would get some cool, awesome dragon moments. And one of the things I didn't like about Game of Thrones before was they would talk about, for instance, before, I think there was like a battle at King's Landing once, but like I'd say like we never actually got to see like any of like the good character, like we never saw a Stark battle. Like we saw like a fight, but we
Yeah.
never saw like until Jon Snow at the Wall, right? That was the
Mhm.
biggest, I think, the first big battle. So I liked that in this one. Like they're not just like, oh, there was a battle with the Mr. Krabs and Daemon won. Like we actually got to see it happen, and we got to see the dragon do some cool shit. So, and again, I like seeing people just get on their dragons and do some cool shit. Like, why would you not, if you're fucking pissed off, just barge into the throne room on your dragon and just be like,
Yeah.
I can.
Well, that's what makes it interesting now, is because Alicent's sons, who are loyal to her, have dragons too.
Yeah.
Now, so it's like that's what's interesting about the future season, is now the two sides both have dragons.
Yeah.
So it's like,
but anyway, that scene, his coronation, she barges in. I'm not mad that we get to see something cool happen, but it didn't make any sense to me. Because she barges in and is just like stomping and sweeping up the townspeople.
Yeah. She killed probably 100 innocent people.
I know,
by barging in, and then like doesn't kill the problem.
Which I always hate in movies when they're like they will kill all the henchmen, or they'll do this without a second's thought, and then when they get to the top guy, they're like, I can't, because if I do, it's for vengeance. And it's like, well, you just killed all the other people for vengeance.
Just killed all these innocent people for no reason now. Like if you had killed the king, at least it would have been like, well, I had to do it to get to him.
Yeah.
But
now it's like, all right, so you just stomped on all the innocent townspeople and then flew away after just having your dragon
had them
yell.
all gathered. You had 100% of the problem gathered there.
I was like, oh damn, this is going to be a 1-season show.
I know. It's just over.
So I thought that was I thought that was kind of dumb, and I've seen some people trying to like defend it and be like, well,
it's like, oh, she's more noble than that. She doesn't.
Yeah, or like it wasn't her war to start. That's what she goes. But
that's what she says. Like
again, why did she go in and stomp on all the people then? Like,
well, she needed to escape, and I guess the dragons are underneath that thing. And she had to go find a dragon to escape on, because she was trying to escape. Remember, they were keeping her captive.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. And they also were like trying not to tell Rhaenyra. They were just going to go like kill Rhaenyra, I think.
Yeah.
And so I think part of it was like she had to get out of that. They were literally having the ceremony in the dragon's lair, like right on top of where the dragons live. And she had to escape from it. So she just.
I guess it does kind of go with like the theme of the show, that the people in power, like stupid, petty people too, and that they don't care about the lives of, the common people, even though that's what they pretend.
They don't.
So maybe it goes with that. Maybe that was also part of it, but at the same time, I was like you just did all of that and you just left,
Ditched.
At least burn somebody,
burn Alicent maybe, or
that's what
Otto,
and again
or something.
I'm wondering, are the Targaryens, are they fireproof still? Are they fireproof in this?
Well, that's a good point.
Because
they should be. Like, why wouldn't they be?
Yeah, I don't know, because
Valerians are not, obviously.
The Valerians are. That's what, when she burnt, I was like, I guess the Valerians aren't fireproof. I guess only the white blonde people are fireproof.
I know,
but
so that'd be interesting, because you wonder, I guess they would be,
because remember Viserys, Daenerys' brother, when they poured hot gold on his head, it killed him. But it was like, did that kill him, or was it like the fact that like gold got in his face? Did that kill him? Like,
well,
so I never understood.
It's not that they can't feel heat, right? I mean,
I don't know, but like Daenerys has literally been in like several burning buildings and been unscathed. So it's like, okay, so she's fireproof, right? And
that gold scene was rough. Ooh.
Yeah,
remembering that now.
So
anyway,
are they fireproof now?
Yeah, but either way, they could have just chomped him up.
Yeah,
could have just.
Well, I thought at the very least he was going to breathe fire, and then the high towers are gone. Is what I thought was going to happen.
That would have been good.
Yeah, I would have been happy with that.
But she does go right to Rhaenyra in the next episode. Like, Rhaenyra was not in that episode like at all. It was like a total King's Landing episode, which was a good episode, but
I would say I was definitely one. I was like, where's Damon?
I know. I was like, I want Rhaenyra and Daemon in this one.
Where's Damon?
But the same thing though, like Daemon in the next episode was just like, all right, let's get on our dragons, let's go stomp them. Lord Cordis comes back and he has like a more diplomatic sort of plan where, well, we have control of all the river now, and we can shut down, like we can blockade it, so the basically lay siege to them. And then we just need to go get some allies, and for that I'm going to send my 2 sons to go. And I just knew.
Well, they volunteered too.
They volunteered, yeah. They wanted to do it. And I was just like, something bad's about to happen.
And it was I was hoping it wouldn't, but I remember when her youngest son, or her youngest out of the 2 that went.
Lucerys is the one, he went to try to make the alliance, but he was beaten there by
Baby Monk.
Aemond. That's so hard because all of these names are like anagrams of each other.
Yes.
Aemon, Daemon, Aegon.
Aemon Targaryen, yeah.
Aemon. Who, by the way, in a previous episode, after I think Baela Larion, she had killed herself, he approached that dragon, and he was always picked on for not having a dragon and not being able to tame a dragon. But he finally did, and he got Vhagar, like the most ferocious and most ancient dragon they have.
Biggest. It's enormous.
Biggest, although I want to say the one Daemon went to in the last episode might be bigger. I don't know.
I think they said
we
he's
haven't
large.
seen
It might be close, but
maybe close.
But like, and at first I didn't even realize how much bigger he was until he was flying next to Lucerys's dragon, and his dragon looked like a
fly,
like a little fly,
like a little, not a fly, but like an eagle and a chickadee. Like,
yeah,
just crazy. This is the end of the season, and it was mind blowing because, you know, Aemond was there, and he'd beaten Lucerys, and so he had already kind of got the alliance for the High Towers, right?
Mm-hmm.
For King's Landing. And so Lucerys had nothing to promise them. He had basically no bargaining power to say like, oh, we'll give you this, that's why you should be with us. So it was hopeless. But Aemond basically was like, I want your eye, and he takes his eye patch off. He's got a cool new blue eye.
Yeah.
And if you want to get a new blue eye, go to
ScreenChronicles.com. We are now selling blue eyes.
But anyway, he leaves, and this was crazy because when he pulled in the rain to this place, yes, Vhagar like yawned in the background, just like, and you just, and that's when you knew, it was like, oh shit, Aemon's here.
And I knew something bad was going to happen.
When he left and Vhagar was not there, it was just like, here we go.
Tense. Like when he first got there, it was so tense. Just it's night and it's storming, and the lightning struck right when that big dragon was just yawning, and you're like, oh my god. And then you thought Aemon was going to be able to cut out Lucerys's eye. Like, he threw him the knife, and no one was really doing anything at first until the king there, or lord, or whatever he is, was like, no, this isn't happening in here. No. Yeah. Those are my men. Escort him out to his dragon. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
But like, and I was like, okay, all right, we're fine. All right. They really got me going there. I thought something bad was going to happen with all the ominous stuff.
Yeah.
But then, when you saw he wasn't there, you're like, oh shit.
Yeah. But I don't think Aemon's intentions were what ended up happening. I think he was trying to scare the shit out of his cousin. Because, like, don't forget, they grew up together. Not that they like each other. They definitely don't like each other.
I think he would have cut his eye out, too.
I think he would have caught him and cut his eye out. But I don't think he wanted to kill him.
No.
He definitely wanted revenge. And the cool part about this chase scene is that they both lose control of their dragons. I think maybe Lucerys, out of the dragon's fear of this other dragon, actually attacked it. instead of running from it,
Yeah.
which made Vagar snap and
Mhm.
stop listening to Aemond. And that's the interesting part is Ewan Mitchell does a great job. He's trying to say, no, stop. And dude, that scene, that moment when Vagar swoops in out of nowhere and just houses it. One bite, everybody knows the rules.
Everyone knows just one bite munches him. The dragon, like there's just some wing clippings that fall off. Man,
that's like what's burned in my mind of the wings that are just spiraling down.
Yeah,
just
it was so easy. It wasn't even like
oh.
I gotta chew. Oh, stuck in my throat a little. It was like chomp. All right, keep flying.
And then you see Aemond on top, like no,
he's
like regret.
Oh, yeah,
like,
he looked like
oh
shit,
fucked up.
Yeah, like this. Was
that's what he's gonna. That's how the next season's gonna start in front of Allison. I fucked up.
Like it's on now. Like there's no way you can't have a war now. There's no way.
And I feel like he's guilty now, but I think his character is just gonna. It's just only gonna motivate him more now. Like this has just pushed him to another evil level. I think he didn't mean to do it, but I think like now he'll do anything. I think next season. Oh, yeah. We'll see. Or it would be interesting if he was like super guilty about it, but I don't think his character's like that.
I think he's going to be off the chain.
Yeah. And there was an interesting scene with him and Daemon.
Yes,
going face to face at dinner, which I think is a little foreshadowing too.
Oh yeah.
He's sort of the version of Daemon on their side, like
the wild card.
Daemon killed his wife. I think we forget Daemon like murdered his wife with a rock in the beginning of the season.
He scared her horse and then she got paralyzed and he was just going to let her go. And she's just like, you're a pussy or something like that. Yeah. He's like, you wouldn't even do it with your bare hands. And he's like, no. And he picks up a rock.
I don't know if he said a word that entire scene.
I think he like said hi to his wife or something. She's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, I'm back. Like
she just started being mean to him like immediately.
Yeah. He's like, all right, done. Made this easy. That's another thing I like about his character. He didn't. A lot of times when they're trying to make someone menacing in shows, they just have them scream and yell and say a lot of like threats.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to do it. Like
he'll just sit there with his legs crossed and stare across the room.
He just, oh man, I love that. And one of my favorite, again, the whole like that whole episode with Viserys when he came out with leprosy and up to the throne, that was great. Then they're trying to decide who's the leader of House Valyrian. Or who's going to be the heir to that? And
Lord Corlys's brother, right?
Yeah, Lord Corlys's brother, Sir Vermund.
Yeah,
Valyrian. I love and like everyone's thinking it. Like the king is like the only one who doesn't see that these kids, who everyone else in their family is blonde hair,
I know,
doesn't look like them at all. Like he's the only one who like doesn't see that, and
he's talking smack to Rhaenyra too.
Yeah, he's saying some smack, and I love that he just looks at them, and Daemon's like, "Say it," like he's just waiting for him.
He's like, "Give me the excuse."
Your children are bastards, and what else? I don't know, but it was, and your wife, and she is a whore, and everyone's just like, "Whoa!" Like
inside, Daemon's like, "Yes."
Just slices his head right in half. That was, I don't know why, this is weird, but it was like kind of satisfying to not like, I liked that character. Like everyone's thinking it. And like, I would have done the same thing. If you're just like, you're trying to take away my right to my place and replace them with people who like clearly didn't come from my nephew, like I'm going to say something like, but it was really just satisfying for Daemon to just slice a head right in half, right in the middle of the throne room. Like, oh man, it was crazy. It was
he found out.
You gonna fuck around? You gonna find out?
And found out. He fucked around and found out. That was another moment that was like etched into my brain. That slice.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite moment from the season? Do you have a favorite moment?
I would say it comes down to, honestly, that last moment with the dragon. By the way, I love the way they ended the season with like just a silent slow motion walk to Rhaenyra with Daemon to tell, and her just turning around looking pissed. And then
I didn't
just,
know it was the end. I was like, all right,
Yeah.
next episode. And I went back and
let's go see a
episode
war.
1
Let's
started.
go see a battle. Like,
Yeah.
I thought that was a brilliant way to end the show. I thought it was great. So I would say that chomping bit was probably like, whoa. But ultimately, what I think of the most is the king scene when he walks up to the throne, and he's just frail. Like, I love that scene. So that's probably my favorite moment, because Viserys, him and Daemon are like my two favorite characters from the season, and I think Paddy Constantine deserves an Emmy for his performance in the show.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm gonna give it to that.
I would say that one is close, if not my first, but then my other one, which is either my second or my first, when Daemon kills Mr. Krabs. That whole moment when he like seems like he's gonna surrender.
Yes.
And then he just goes ham, you know. And I just love seeing this because, you know, you knew he was a capable guy, but he also did have some insecurities earlier in the show. And I feel like his insecurities got less as the show went on.
Right.
I feel like he became more confident and less concerned with that crap as he got older. Up until that point, he was like he lost it on the messenger. You know, he was showboating at the joust, you know, and he was like kind of having a little pity party. And he said like a bad thing about his uncle's son, you know, at the bar. So then when he has this moment where he just like goes off and he's just running and they're all just shooting arrows at him and he's just slicing dudes down and eventually he even gets hit. Then he's just ready to stand his ground, and the dragon comes, the Valyrians come, and he just goes in there, and Mr. Krabs, who thinks he's untouchable, just gets cut in half and dragged. Oh my god, I loved all of that so much. And even just going into that, when he walks into the throne room, then next time you see him with the crown on, his fresh cut and his Colby energy, you know, like
stop.
Like, man, I loved all that. I was like, all right,
good shit.
I was unsure if I should like Daemon, and now I don't care. Like, I really don't care. He could do anything now. I don't care.
Right. You could even go with bro moments too, like with the king and him.
Yeah,
little up the throne. That was probably the bro moment I would go to.
That's hands down. Either that bro moment when he helps his brother up the to the throne, or when he goes back to his brother after, when he could have, you know, secured a foothold in the sea lands or whatever those were called, and he could have been, you know, he could have took the king power that people had given to him. You know, he could have took that, but he went back to his brother and was like, hey, let's be friends again. You know, those were definitely my bro moments.
Totally. Well, cool. We should compare and contrast a little bit with Lord of the Rings now.
Yeah, so that's all of our just straight talk on House of Dragon.
I know.
Let's compare now. So Rings of Power from Amazon Prime and House of Dragon on HBO are both prequels of Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, respectively. Both different fantasy worlds, both with different tones, and but I'm probably, if not almost entirely the same fan base, there's definitely a major overlap.
Right.
So, and they're both coming out episode by episode, week per week.
Yeah.
I think almost starting either the same week or like a week or two off.
One was a week before, like it came out, but then it was simultaneously coming out together. So you had Rings of Power Friday night, and then you had Game of Thrones or House of Dragon on Sunday night, which was awesome for a while. I gotta say, that was like, what a treat. And yeah, I would say though, my reaction at first was like, House of Dragon was really good right off the bat. Right off the bat, I was compelled. I was into it, where it took a couple episodes with Rings of Power for me to start falling in love with it, I think. Mm-hmm. And by the end of Rings of Power, I was like, I want more. I want more.
I have to say, you know, as far as just, so if we're talking about watchability here, there was moments, you know, I watched the Rings of Power episode, and I would say, like you said, I got kind of more into it as it went on. But, you know, especially the earlier episodes, after an episode ended, I was like, I think I could be done watching this for tonight. I'm going to keep watching it, but I was like,
Mhm.
I had no ooh, I need to get into the next one right now. I don't think I like really ever felt that, except maybe after the one episode that had the battle in it.
I did after like they teased Adar, the one
Oh
guy.
yeah,
A
yeah.
little bit. I was like, well, I want to know who he is, but it wasn't as strong as House of Dragon for me, where like I want the next episode. I cannot wait. I think there was only like maybe one episode this season when I wasn't like thinking all week, oh, what's gonna happen, what's gonna happen. But so most episodes I was like, cannot wait to find out what happens in this plot.
Yeah, that was me. And a lot happened in every episode. I felt like, like with Rings of Power, I felt like if I walked away and I missed Andir, the
Mhm.
elf from the Southlands, talking to some random people about elf stuff, and like I would have been fine. Like if I missed any of the scenes when they were in Numenor, I felt
Mhm.
like I was fine. Like I felt like, I could get up, make dinner or whatever, and I'm
Right.
like, all right. But if you got up and you missed like a child cage match in House of Dragon, when you're just like, well, people are just talking at this, child
Mm-mm.
death battle, well, then you're going to miss out on the prostitute talking about how she doesn't like that and how she
Yeah.
has the king's son.
Or
And
how one of the brothers are trying to retrieve the king
yeah,
is in favor of like Rhaenys and the original line, and the other one isn't as much,
yeah, I just felt
It's
like as far as plot and story goes, I mean, it just felt like generally you couldn't get up and leave House of Dragon without missing something.
totally.
And that's how I always felt with Last Kingdom. It's like if you're on your phone and you missed someone talking to a Dane for
Yeah.
a minute, then you missed on wait,
You're gonna be
that?
confused. You're gonna be
Yeah.
confused. Which
And
is, which I like in a show. I don't want a show where I feel like I can go and get up without pausing it.
mhm. There's
know?
some, but there's a different
Well,
expectation.
not
then.
these kind of shows though.
Exactly.
Not these kind of like the shows. Like I really love Lord of the Rings universe.
Mhm.
I love the Lord of the Rings universe, and this, Rings of Power got me into like I went back and rewatched a couple of the movies,
And Lord of the Rings made Game of Thrones possible.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're talking about the books made George R. R. Martin inspired. And if we're talking about the shows, the only reason people thought a fantasy show could work is because a series of fantasy movies, with a similar aesthetic,
Yeah.
definitely not the same tones and stuff like that.
I don't think Lord
But
of the Rings goes into as many personal humanistic relationships and traits.
no,
Uh,
but I mean, that's
know.
what made Game of Thrones possible. Is they're like, all right, we'll make it look like Peter Jackson's
Mm,
Lord of the Rings, but what we can change though with George R. R. Martin's story is go into a world where it's more character driven and
yes.
and there's people who are immoral. Like in Lord of the Rings, most people are pretty noble on the good
Yeah.
guy's side. And even, people who do turn bad, like Boromir, usually do something redeeming in the end. And
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
that comes from, what the writer was trying to do is he's trying to like show people are good and that good triumphs over evil, and that was the kind of the thing. In this one, George R. R. Martin was like, everyone's a little bit evil,
Yeah.
and sometimes, just bad people are just doing things for their own reason. And
The only one now that I think was almost completely good in House of Dragon was Viserys.
yeah, the king.
I think he's like the only one who was almost, and even him you could argue because he did say like, yeah, kill my wife to have the baby, but he had, like we talked earlier, it was like not really much of a decision.
Rhaenyra, one thing too, there was a few times like she even lied or like she even like threw her husband under the bus.
Oh, she wasn't an angel. She
Yeah,
wasn't
there was like when she was talking with the king's cousin, her dad's cousin, her aunt. I remember there was one time that she was like, why should I like you? Like you had my son killed. And she like was plotting with Damon. Damon was like, I can't marry you if you have a husband. And she's like, oh, I know. Like
Yeah.
she was all
that
about
was crazy.
she was all about killing him. And she's like like people, he's like, people will talk about this, and he's like, yeah, they'll talk about this, and then they'll think about what we might do next. Like she was all in, and then when the aunt was confronting her though, she was like, oh, I didn't take part in it. I didn't.
She should have let her in on the
I
secret.
did
I
not
think.
explicitly order his death. I did not.
She should have like wrote some directions, some like coordinates on a piece of paper, and it's like fly here, and you will find what you seek. She'll see that he's like there, happy with his lover, and she'll realize they faked it, and he's alive and well, and Rhaenyra and Daemon are actually nice people.
But anyway, she lied. But anyway, though, Rings of Power, I just felt like there was definitely, you know, it had my attention with the Rings or Lord of the Rings storyline.
Mm-hmm.
I like Lord of the Rings much more than I like Game of Thrones, especially with the ending. But as far as like House of Dragon, I liked House of Dragon. Yeah, I thought was much more watchable.
I thought it was more quality overall, like better overall acting, dialogue, and like we said, the plot kind of was not a lot of dull moments in House of Dragon.
Yeah, you know, we were talking about how all the characters are more dynamic in House of Dragon, but I still think you could still have, because like there were still some dynamic characters in Rings of Power. There was still, you know, like Sauron, you know, was for instance portraying like pretending to be someone, and
there was true. Adar was kind of an interesting one because he was bad, but he also like had fought Sauron. So
yeah, there was still some dynamic characters, but I just felt
Galadriel is a good example because she was like crazy with vengeance.
Mm-hmm. I just think there wasn't as much downtime in
there's not in
House of Dragon.
Totally.
Which one do you think looked better? Which one do you think, we're talking visual effects, set design, all that fun stuff, which one do you think looked better?
It's interesting because they look different and they both look great.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd go with Rings of Power.
I would too, I think.
Especially some of the vision scenes that they had were phenomenally done, I think. Well, you would go Rings of Power?
I would too, yeah. It looked so good that I was like, man, this looks just as good as Lord of the Rings. And then I would go look up scenes from Lord of the Rings online too in HD, and I'm like, oh, this doesn't look as good as Rings of Power.
Yeah.
I was like,
they can do much more now, you know.
But like I never felt that way watching, even when I watched it last time when we were in PT school, I never felt that way. But then after watching it, just, you know, I like real filming in real places more. It normally looks much better. But
and I'll tell you what,
the budget they had, I mean, the whole whatever made up forest they were in, you know, even if it was like supernatural gold and stuff, I was like, it feels like they're really there. I was like, like my brain can't tell that's
the
not
mines,
a real thing.
The mines,
where
the dwarfs live it was great. It was great. And you know, Rings of Power had a very strong ending. It had a huge twist that I did not expect. And I have to give them credit for that because I was not onto them at all. And maybe shame on me for that because I know some other people watching it were catching on to him when I just was oblivious. So to Sauron
I mean, we talked about in our Rings of Power recap, you know, I said it a bunch there, but I was going a completely different way with what I thought they were doing with who Sauron was pretending to be. I was going a completely different way. With who he was and what he was supposed to be.
So I thought that it was a great twist, a really good way to end the show.
Mm-hmm.
But look, both shows made me super excited for second seasons. Both shows sort of set up a lot too. You know,
is there one you're more anticipating though? One you would like, if you had to be like, all right, you're watching either you get an early look at season 2 of this or this. Which one would you pick?
You know what's really funny? And I don't know why this is. It doesn't make sense objectively because objectively, I think House of Dragon was a better season, better show off the bat. But I think it goes into my like Lord of the Rings sort of nerdum and like fanaticism that I would choose that sooner.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think I would.
I'm definitely more of a fan of Lord of the Rings in
That's
general
why I think
than Rings or of Game of Thrones. But I would probably, if you were just like, hey, which one are you going to see next? I would definitely pick House of Dragon, which is surprising to me because again, Game of Thrones season 8 happened, and,
Yeah.
and that's definitely when it ended. I was like, oh, I just want to keep watching this. I want to keep watching.
Yeah, but I felt the way with both shows though. I mean, I think of in Rings of Power the scene with Sauron walking into Mordor. I was like, oh, I want to see some of him as like whatever shape he's in right now. Is it like I don't know? I want to see more of him.
I'm
untapped.
very hopeful, and again, I love that they kept a lot of the core themes.
Mm-hmm.
Both shows, I think, did a really good job of capturing, at least in my opinion, capturing the essence of why fans liked their original like properties. Game of Thrones fans really liked betrayal and intrigue, in action, and crazy orgies and
incest
and good guys turning out to be bad guys and stuff. And then Lord of the Rings, and Rings of Power, they did a good job, I think, capturing camaraderie and friendship and doing the right thing, and while also I think bringing in some new stuff that like Game of Thrones has done, which is like giving you a big twist, making some characters a little more gray, so I think they did a really good, both did service too, in my opinion. I know there's some fans who are probably going to say neither one did, or this one didn't, or this one, but I think they did a good job of speaking to who the fans are, in my opinion.
Yeah, I liked both shows a lot, but I would give, if I had to give the hand to one of them, I would definitely pick House of Dragons. I just think quality wise, acting wise, story wise, it was kind of superior in all.
What about action
aspects?
Which one had better action, do you think, between the two?
It's interesting because I wanted more action from both of them. I don't know. I feel like they both had. I might give it to Rings of Power as far as they had like a couple smaller battles, although when House of Dragon did have action, it was superb.
I have to say,
I don't know if I have
there
a
was
clear answer.
really only one major battle in each one. There was the battle on the beach in House of Dragon, and there was the battle in the Southlands in Rings of Power.
There was that, and there was the battle when they were slaves, when the elves were slaves.
Oh, there was that
too.
Fight. But then there was also jousting. There was also jousting.
There was jousting, yeah.
And there was
maybe even matched on that. Maybe even matched. But both of them, honestly, I wanted more action from.
I definitely would like more action. I don't know. That's a toss-up for me. I think I'm gonna lean House of Dragon again. I think for me, it's just because of the characters. I was like more interested in. Like I really like Daemon. So when Daemon is when he's on his dragon lighting people up, or when he's running through the battlefield, getting arrow shot at him, slicing up guys, I was more into it. And I think also too, just the fact that a lot of the action in Rings of Power was done by elves. And so they're all just kind of, I
didn't really feel super connected to the main elf guy. That like, he was cool. I like him, but I don't feel
I didn't feel connected.
I was more interested when the guy who ended up being Sauron, I don't know why I'm blanking on his name right now.
I don't know.
Like basically had a fist fight with those guys in the alley.
Yeah.
And was amazing.
And again, I like Galadriel too, but they like everyone was just superhuman next to whoever they were fighting. Like,
yeah, so it wasn't really fair.
Other than when the main elf Adar or Adrin or whatever his name was, when he was fighting that one giant orc, then it was like him just getting owned. But otherwise, like most of the time, they were like gods, like killing orcs. They were just like arrow, 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 bullseye, bullseye, bullseye.
No problem.
Dodge on a horse, slice you in half.
That's a good point.
And it was cool to see, but it just felt like there was like, I was like kind of like, and especially with the history of characters being killed off on the show, I was like, is Daemon gonna die here? Is this supposed to be like his last stand? Especially with the time jumps.
It's a great point.
I was like, are they just gonna jump?
You never know in a Game of Thrones universe there's no safe bets that this person's gonna survive.
Yeah.
You know, they've
So-
really, no one's safe,
Mhm.
and that's always how it's been in Game of. No one is safe. I might, you've kind of convinced me a little bit. I might give it to House
Who?
of Dragons too, just because we also got a lot more dragon stuff, which I think everyone wanted more from Game of Thrones, and so to get a
Yeah.
lot of cool dragon sequences, that was cool.
There wasn't really any cool creature battles in Rings of Power other than
Mm.
when
Mm.
the ice troll in the first one, which was
Right,
I thought
which
as soon as
was
Galadriel
cool.
stepped in, I thought it was pretty easy. Like she just pretty
Right.
much easily killed it.
Yeah.
And then you could say the wolves when who I think is Gandalf the Stranger fought some wolves. They were like some big CG wolves, but
Yeah.
again, that was pretty quick. He like threw one and then force pushed the rest away.
Yeah.
Kind of. So I mean, like
Yeah, we got a
getting
lot
to
of cool
see-
dragon stuff. That was
Oh, that was especially when the later seasons kicked in, when the dragons were just flying over the who are the rider people? I forget their names, but like when she was riding over them and just burning up the Lannister army. Oh my god, that was amazing. And so
Mhm.
to just see that multiple times, and I thought the way they shot them still had impact. Like the fact that they
yeah.
like that the one time the dragon lands on top of this guy on the beach who's like literally rooting for Damon. He's like, yes, Damon, yes. And
Yes. Oh yeah.
crunch.
That was crazy.
I really liked it. They had jousting. They had
Yeah.
they
You know
had
what?
they had a couple duels. And then I
Fine.
thought
I'm going to convert my answer to House of Dragon on that one.
awesome.
See, that's what these discussions are for.
Which and I think I already know the answer to this, but which world would you rather be in from these these shows, not based off of the rest of not the Game of Thrones or not from Lord of the Rings, just from these two seasons? Which one would you rather want to exist in? Would you love to like be a part of? If you could be whatever
Lord of
character,
the Rings. I still
Yeah.
go Rings of Power.
Yeah.
I do. I think Rings of Power, because you know what? In those movies, the point of Tolkien is he wanted the small, like sort of not the rich and powerful people
Mhm.
to be the answer. You know what I mean? Where in Game of Thrones, it seems like it's always like the nobles
It's
and the
rich and
powerful people that are getting stuff, part of the plot. Whereas in anybody can be a hero, sort of in the Lord of the Rings world. And in this season, it was the Harfoots were sort of heroes, and obviously in Lord of the Rings, it's like the hobbits.
Mhm.
So I feel like there's more opportunity.
I feel like I could be like more of who I want to be in the Rings of Power. Like I feel like
Yes,
I would do well as being a good guy there.
yes,
And in the Lord of the Rings world, like I don't like unless I had a dragon
Oh, you mean House of Dragon world?
and in House of Dragon world, I
Yeah.
don't think I could exist as Steve, a good person, without like like Jon Snow got mutinied.
You're gonna live in constant fear. Everybody betrays each other in that one. It seems like
Yeah.
there's way more like
if I could
like the
like step
Harfoots-
into House
yeah.
of Dragon with a dragon and like
Yeah.
be like, all right, we are gonna set up good people shop over here.
Yeah.
Like maybe, but generally I think it's just a nicer, friendlier world.
at times, as long
And,
as
yeah.
there's no orcs.
As long as there's no
Um,
orcs.
But it really is like the good of the good fighting the worst of the evil in Lord of the Rings, whereas in House of Dragons, everybody's kind of bad.
And the orcs from Rings of Power, that's Tolkien made them to represent the people from New Jersey. Did you know that?
Coming from two guys who live on states that border New Jersey.
Yeah. Trust us. Trust. We're like Rohan and Gondor right here, and New Jersey's clearly
Mordor.
Mordor.
Jesus Christ. Oh my God.
We defend the rest of you. And Ohio. Ohio's like,
What the
I don't
fuck?
know. Morgoth's world, you know, like we're defending the rest of you from them. We're on the wall, man. We're defending you from the north, you know. Game of Thrones reference now.
And you're down in the Southlands now.
I'm in the Southlands.
Oh no, the Southlands is Mordor. So,
I can't so far, Houston's kind of Mordor. You know, it's warmer.
Cheaters.
It's all cheaters. Orcs are cheaters, I think, right?
Yeah. But anyway, 2 great shows. Watch them both.
If you had to give the win, who are you giving the win to?
Oh, I already said House of Dragon gets the win.
House of Dragon gets the win. I mean, like you said, it's the story, the action.
I think the only one Rings of Power has maybe the upper hand on is the look, and that could even be debatable for some people, I suppose. But I mean, I think for me, it's a clear winner.
There was a few times in House of Dragon, like when the dragon was stomping through the coronation, where I was like, oh, it kind of looks like a little fake smoke, and the people there, the lighting looks kind of weird. I can't think of any moment in Rings of Power I was like, that looks a little weird. You know, that CG looks a little, it doesn't look is real. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think House of Dragon's always been rooted in a more real looking kind of thing, where in Lord of the Rings and stuff, I can give myself a little bit of liberty to have the setting be kind of stretched. Like, you know, I feel like I expect things in Lord of the Rings to look less real than in House of Dragon for some reason.
The win goes to House of Dragon then.
Yep.
Let us know, people, too, if whatever you think we should compare and contrast 2 different shows, movies that you think you would like to hear us talk about. Let us know.
Yeah, this one was just interesting because there were 2 like very similar genres coming out at the exact same time, and
it was fun.
You know, it was definitely a fun time watching both.
I'm not complaining that we had 2 fantasy shows going on around the same time period. Because normally when something like that does end, I'm always just felt hungry for more. Like when Last Kingdom ends, I'm like, where's my Viking show? I know. And like when Mandalorian ends, I'm just like, when do we get another good live action Star Wars thing? You know?
Yeah.
So I'm glad we got both of those. Thank you all for watching and listening to this program today, brought to you by House of the Griffin. We enjoyed discussing this with you. Yes. Let us know your favorite moments. What show did you think was better? Which one are you more excited for coming out? And where do you think it's going to go? And don't give us any spoilers. People who read the next book from House of Dragon, don't give us spoilers. People who just watched the show, or people maybe who did read the books, and you're just like, well, there is a difference. Maybe they're going to go. You can give us your thoughts then. But either way, it's like we always say.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.